going to start with part 3 of my story. This one is, there's going to be a kind of a gap in there, but this is when I was about in my late 40s. And I got to meet Joseph. I was literally put on his front step. Neither one of us were looking for anybody. We were fine with being by ourselves. We were happy. There was no, it was okay if we met somebody, but we weren't looking for anybody, neither one of us. And so there we found each other. And we knew right from the very beginning that this was the person for me and I was the person for him. So we just didn't waste any time. So we started making great memories. We did a lot of hiking. We did some traveling, and I think back about it now, and I'm so glad we have those memories, as we call it, in our bank. We had decided we wanted to move to Florida. We were going to get married. We were going to do all the things. And Joseph, we picked this area in particular because some friends had lived here, and they told us about it. And also, he wanted to do some scuba diving, and he loved scuba diving. I wasn't going to be able to with him because I had burst my eardrums at one time, so that was out for me, but I would love it here, so it didn't matter. We both would find things we liked. So anyway, we moved, and we were in the process of moving. We got his condo sold, and sold it pretty quickly, so we had to get down here and find a place. Joseph did all that, and then he was deciding whether he wanted to take his boat with him or not, and he said no. And so his brother-in-law was going to buy him out of his half of it. And he was moving the hitch from one hitch to the other. And he thought he pulled his back. And went to the doctor, everything. Nothing showed up, everything was fine. So they put him in physical therapy. Well, in physical therapy, it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it's like, this is kind of going backwards than what it's supposed to do, right? So they sent him, we went back it got so bad we had to go back to the emergency room again. And they still weren't finding anything. They did some tests. They said, well, you're kind of young for this, but we'll still do these tests, and blah, blah, blah. And it just got worse, and we were in the emergency room, and they did not treat him well at all. And in fact, they were going to send him home again. And Joseph is a pharmacist, so he has a doctorate in that. And so they were saying, what do you want? They just thought it was somebody wanting drugs, I guess, for pain. And the doctor came, what do you want me to do, Mr. Birkenmeyer? And he said, Dr. Birkenmeyer. Never heard Joseph talk like that to anybody. And especially didn't put out the doctor thing, because he's so laid back. And sure enough, he said, I want a CT. And so they did one, and sure enough, they found it at that time. And our whole life changed that day. Once they found it, he had broken a vertebrae. They did the test, and sure enough, it came back cancer. Then they were really nice about everything. So we started to move, though. We literally had to still move. So that's kind of a big event anyway. And I have this, and I couldn't get him to eat, and it was I can't even remember parts of it. It's so surreal. But my son came to help us move, and so it took us a trip that's 14 hours, 16 hours, took us 4 days because he could only go a little bit at a time. And 4 hours is about all we could handle with it because of the pain. And we, of course, we know a lot more now than we did, but basically his back was continuing to break along this route. And it broke. By the time it was done, it had broken in 11 places in his back. So we get down here, we move in, some dates you remember, we moved in here August the 3rd. By the time September the 15th, we were in Little Rock because we were losing him. He got down to 115 pounds. Couldn't get him to eat anything. It was just horrendous. And so we got to Little Rock, and that's where the premier place for multiple myeloma is. And he had 2 stem cell transplants. In a situation like that, and since he had what they call lesions, which meant he had a hole in his bone, he had hundreds of them, but this one was so big they wanted him to be in hospital to do a stem cell transplants. We could have stayed at the hotel. They had a whole thing that they did for the patients, and so we did go. I'm sorry this video is going to be a little bit longer. I try to keep them at 5 minutes and we're already over. But we had to stay in the hospital, and since it's stem cell, we had to be pretty isolated. They had a whole ward just for stem cell or for multiple myeloma, and you're stuck there together, and you either do one of two things. You either become closer or you get torn apart, and in our case we became closer, thank goodness. And he did live. There was at least 3 times that we weren't sure. He ended up having blood clots. He ended up having pneumonia. It was really hard, and he still fights. Well, not as much anymore, but for a while there, he still fought with pneumonia. We had to be careful with even a cold. So that's why we're so careful with COVID, because for Joseph, if a cold can do that, what can anything else do? So we've had to be very, very careful. And what everybody had to live for those 2 years, we've been living like that since 7 years now. He's been on this journey for 7 years. And I say all that to let you know it was very traumatic. Caleb even has some issues with it because he had to deal with Joseph, and Joseph was not himself, and I didn't think Caleb would ever come back and visit us even. And now Joseph and Caleb are closer than anything now. But you can have a traumatic, everybody thinks PTSD, that's only if you're in war. No, that's not true. You can have that with anything, and people have traumatic events with health, and that's where we would have fallen under that. Now, we were very, very fortunate in that the place that we went understood that, and they made sure that I was taken care of emotionally, mentally, everything, physically, even if I needed it. They had meditation there for us. They had yoga there for us. They were very cutting edge, and these doctors and nurses give their life for this disease. So they were there with us. They're still there with us when we need them. And our doctor here, we just realized how fortunate we were. Our doctor here is amazing, and the place that we go to is amazing. And every doctor and nurses along our way have been there for us. And but I just want you to understand, even if it's a health thing or it could be anything, this is your brain that we're talking about. Every brain is different in how they interact with things, their personality, their environment, everything. But we can come together and we can make sure that we're there for each other. So I just wanted to give you my story in that little bit, so that you understand anything can happen to anybody at any time, and it can change your life. But it can also change your life to the better in other ways too. Yes, we miss some things. Yes, we will never get to do some things anymore. Our life is different. But we've learned how to have a life that we can enjoy, and we definitely love each other, and we're definitely going to be there for each other. And Joseph has started to exercise more, and we're getting out there and walking. So I've been putting stories. I know some people like stories, some people don't, on Instagram and Facebook. And it's Joseph's journey, and we've been walking every day, and our goal is for him to walk around the neighborhood one time. It's a little bit over a mile without assistance, and because that's going to help us when it's time to travel. So for him to get from one place to the other, like if we're getting on a train, or we still don't do airplanes because of Joseph's multiple myeloma. That's just too many germs to deal with. But we can do trains where we can get in open cars and things like that. But anyway, I hope everybody has a great week, rest of the week and the weekend, and I'll have my Friday review tomorrow. Have a great day.